He started swinging through the trees 75 years ago, braving the natural dangers of the jungle while sheltering its beauty from the savage forces of civilization. He has captured the fancy of readers the world over. His stories have been translated into dozens of languages, and he's continually triumphed as one of the most successful and beloved box office stars in the history of motion pictures. He is Tarzan of the Apes. Tarzana, California is named for him. It's here that Tarzan's legendary creator, Edgar Rice Burroughs, lived most of his later life. A native of Chicago, Burroughs was born in 1875 and worked as a cattle driver in Idaho, a miner in Oregon, and got himself discharged from the United States Cavalry because of a weak heart. But Burroughs' imagination was always active, despite the fact that by the age of 36, he had nothing in the way of solid career prospects. Although he knew nothing about writing and had never been to the African jungle, Burroughs always wondered what role heredity would play if an infant of English nobility were transplanted and raised in an entirely different environment. His first Tarzan short story, Tarzan of the Apes, explored this theme. First published in All Story magazine in 1912, it introduced the world to the boy-child Tarzan, raised by apes in the wilds of Africa. The public's reaction was explosive, and Burroughs set about writing some further Tarzan adventures. They were gathered together and published as a best-selling novel in 1914. And Hollywood quickly took notice. The era of silent pictures was in full flower in 1918, when the first Tarzan movie, Tarzan of the Apes, was produced. When a fellow actor fell out of a tree and lost the part, barrel-chested Elmo Lincoln was cast as Tarzan. The word Tarzan in Burroughs' ape language meant white skin, and Lincoln, who got his start with famed director D.W. Griffith in such films as Intolerance, was forced to shave off all his body hair for the role. And in this scene, Lincoln actually killed a lion on screen, years before animal rights groups stepped in to ban the practice. Though it was filmed in Louisiana and used jungle footage from Brazilian rainforests, audiences responded to the exotic African setting and the heroic adventures of this first movie Tarzan, making Tarzan of the Apes one of the first silent movies to gross over $1 million. Tarzan has been called a combination of Hercules, Marco Polo, and Tom Mix, solidly combined in a body weaned by the jungle. And Elmo Lincoln again portrayed Tarzan in the second film of the series, The Romance of Tarzan, a hasty follow-up to the initial film the same year. Both movies also featured Enid Markey as Jane, Tarzan's jungle companion. The success of the first film was no fluke. Tarzan had become permanently entrenched in the public's consciousness, offering the ultimate in escapist entertainment at a time when it was sorely needed. Gene Polar replaced Elmo Lincoln for the third Tarzan film, The Revenge of Tarzan, in 1920. Polar was a former fireman whose height and bulk, rather than his acting ability, won him the role. But he was replaced in the serial The Son of Tarzan by P. Dempsey Tabler, one of the founders of Paramount Pictures, who had to wear a wig to perform his Tarzan role. The serial, produced in 1920, featured a rare wedding scene between Tarzan and Jane. But tragedy also struck when actor Kamala Searle, portraying Korak, was slammed to the ground by an elephant who was supposed to gently lower the actor to the jungle floor. Searle died from his injuries, and a double had to be used for the remaining scenes. Despite this, the serial was another Tarzan box office success, paving the way for The Adventures of Tarzan the following year. The serial brought back Elmo Lincoln in the Tarzan role and featured Edgar Rice Burroughs himself in the prologue. The storyline, like most of the Tarzan movies, combined elements of several Burroughs stories with sequences invented by the scriptwriters themselves, and always involved a cliffhanger or two. Following The Adventures of Tarzan, there was a gap of 6 years until the next Tarzan movie, due to some tax trouble on the part of producers. But in 1927, James Pierce, an All-American center for Indiana University's football team, was poised to become the fourth Tarzan. Edgar Rice Burroughs spotted Pierce at a party at his Tarzana ranch and immediately had him cast in Tarzan and the Golden Lion. The film, released in 1927, was a smash, proving that Tarzan's 6-year absence from the screen hadn't diminished his popularity. It also featured the film debut of a young actor named Boris Karloff, playing the chief of an African tribe 4 years before Frankenstein would make him a household name. Pierce eventually married Edgar Rice Burroughs' daughter, Joan, and together they played Tarzan and Jane on radio from 1929 to 1932. Tarzan had proven to be one of the biggest box office successes of the silent era. But with the advent of sound in Hollywood, the question became, what would Tarzan's famous yell sound like? Different sounds were tested, including the howl of a camel and the moo of a cow who hadn't been milked for 2 days, before the perfect Tarzan yell was discovered. It combined an off-key violin bowed with a file, a hyena's howl run backwards, and a dog's bark run forward. Frank Merrill, a gymnastics champion from 1916 to 1918, was cast as the first talkie Tarzan in the serial Tarzan and the Mighty in 1928. And he followed it up in 1929 with Tarzan the Tiger. Merrill's expertise with Roman rings and rope climbing were put to good use in the films, which were the first to incorporate the classic swinging through the trees sequences, which became a signature of subsequent Tarzan movies. Merrill also began the tradition of casting athletic heroes in the Tarzan role, a natural combination which led MGM in 1932 to a young Olympic swimming champion who would later become known as the definitive Tarzan. Johnny Weissmuller had been a gold medalist in the 1924 and 1928 Olympic Games and possessed the physical grace and naive natural expressiveness that would come to typify the Tarzan image. Weissmuller was born in 1904 and took up swimming to counteract childhood sickliness. He eventually developed into a 6'3" champion who in 1950 was named the greatest swimmer of the half-century by world sports writers. But it is as Tarzan that Weissmuller is most fondly remembered by movie audiences. His first foray into the jungle came in Tarzan the Ape Man, a big-budget production which featured Maureen O'Sullivan in the role of Jane. This movie featured an initial meeting of Weissmuller and O'Sullivan, in which the immortal line, Tarzan, Jane, not me Tarzan, you Jane, as it's often misquoted, was uttered. And it was this film which altered the character of Tarzan, changing him from the intelligent, well-spoken English lord to the monosyllabic king of the jungle we've come to know in countless films since. Though Burroughs objected to this Hollywoodization of his creation, audiences couldn't get enough, and producer Saul Lesser, who claimed that Tarzan movies were in constant release throughout the world, with one of the films showing within a 50-mile radius of any city, continued producing the series throughout the 1930s. Buster Mr. Crab, a champion on the 1932 Olympic team, played Tarzan in this 12-episode serial, Tarzan the Fearless, in 1933. Tarzan, throughout the history of the series, had a total vocabulary of only 150 words, and his average dialogue ran to about 100 lines per film. This emphasis on physical presence rather than acting ability was what enabled so many athletes, such as 1928 shot-putting champion Herman Brix, to successfully portray the Lord of the Apes. Brix, who later changed his name to Bruce Bennett, starred in the New Adventures of Tarzan serial in 1935. And the 1936 decathlon champion Glenn Morris followed with Tarzan's Revenge in 1937. But Brix was back for more in Tarzan and the Green Goddess in 1938.
Well, what's the matter, little fellow? Let me see what's bothering you. Well, no wonder you're limping. All right, I'll have it out in a moment. There it is.
During the late 1930s, there was confusion in Hollywood over which of the champion athletes, Herman Brix, Glenn Morris, or Johnny Weissmuller, was the real Tarzan. But for audiences, there was never any doubt. Weissmuller came across as the most natural, heroic, and sympathetic Tarzan. And the on-screen chemistry between his ape-man and Maureen O'Sullivan's Jane set the standard for all further interpretations of the Tarzan legend. Weissmuller also loved animals, and he would familiarize himself with all the African creatures cast in a particular film before the cameras rolled, resulting in classic hijinks with Cheetah the chimp. And Mary the rhino, a staple of many of the era's Tarzan films, reportedly loved Weissmuller like a son. But the anthropological accuracy was not a hallmark of the Tarzan series. Burroughs himself had once mistakenly written a tiger into a Tarzan story. And here, in one of the Tarzan films of the 1930s, the elephants are the Indian, not African variety, resulting in cardboard ear extensions having to be added. From 1939 through 1949, Weissmuller was the one and only Tarzan, appearing in a total of 9 Tarzan movies. In Tarzan Finds a Son in 1939, Tarzan discovers a young child who has miraculously survived the plane crash in the jungle. Tarzan and Jane raised the child as their adopted son, naming him Boy. Weissmuller personally chose 5-year-old Johnny Sheffield for the role, teaching him to swim and to yell like a jungle native. The team of Weissmuller, O'Sullivan, and Sheffield captured the hearts of moviegoers everywhere and seemed to represent the definitive Tarzan, Jane, and Boy. Tarzan Finds a Son was one of the most successful yet in the series, and the trio stayed together for 2 subsequent productions. Tarzan's Secret Treasure featured Reginald Owen and Barry Fitzgerald as scientists who discover gold in Tarzan's domain. And Tarzan's New York Adventure had Tarzan following circus promoter Charles Bickford to America after he'd kidnapped Boy. Upon seeing New York for the first time, Tarzan uttered the classic comment, "Stone Jungle." Despite the continuing success of the series, Maureen O'Sullivan was tired of the second fiddle role of Jane and went on to more challenging movie parts. Jane was absent entirely from Tarzan Triumphs in 1943, in which Tarzan and Boy took on the Nazis. And in Tarzan's Desert Mystery the next year, a letter from Jane in England asking Tarzan to send a rare malaria serum extract from some jungle plants forms the story. Blonde beauty Brenda Joyce brought Jane back to the screen in Tarzan and the Amazons, in which a team of archaeologists seek out an undiscovered city of antiquity. And Joyce continued the role in 3 subsequent films with Weissmuller and Sheffield. Tarzan and the Leopard Woman in 1946 featured Tarzan battling a bloodthirsty African tribe. Tarzan and the Huntress the following year used the shortage of zoo animals after World War II as the basis for a story of explorers trapping African animals, before Tarzan steps in to foil their plans with a climactic elephant stampede. Tarzan and the Mermaids in 1948 proved to be the final film of the Weissmuller era. It was also marked by tragedy, when Angel Garcia, Weissmuller's stunt double in the film, was killed in this dive from the Acapulco cliffs. Despite the continuing success of the Tarzan series, Weissmuller in 1949 left to star in another continuing role, that of Jungle Jim. Based on the famous comic strip and radio show of the 1940s and described by one critic as Tarzan with clothes on, the Jungle Jim series was an immediate success and paved the way for similar productions. Bamba the Jungle Boy moved Johnny Sheffield to center stage, and the film's success led to 10 other movies in the juvenile jungle adventure series. Others took a more comical approach to the Tarzan mystique.
Good evening, Mr. Wise Molar.
Look, Jim, nice bananas, see? She did not try to give Jim a bath. She'll go away and Jim can get bananas himself.
Even Jimmy Durante got into the act, appearing as Schnarzan in MGM's film Hollywood Party. But 1949 saw a frenzied search for a new Tarzan. Over 1,000 actors were interviewed before Lex Barker, a major in the U.S. infantry during World War II, was cast in the role. Tarzan's Magic Fountain, Barker's first appearance as the Ape Man, was released in January 1949 and featured the very first Tarzan, Elmo Lincoln, in a bit part. But it would prove to be the fifth and final Tarzan outing for Brenda Joyce, the only actress other than Maureen O'Sullivan to find continued success in the role of Jane. Barker followed with 4 more Tarzan films in the early 1950s, proving that the success of the series wasn't dependent upon Weissmuller, but rather on the enduring and measurable appeal of Edgar Rice Burroughs' creation. Although set in Africa, no Tarzan movie had ever actually been filmed there, until Tarzan's Peril in 1951. The film told the story of 3 escaped convicts who were supplying guns to a native tribe, and featured famed singer Dorothy Dandridge as an African high priestess. Tarzan's Savage Fury followed in 1952. And Tarzan and the She-Devil, the following year, had Barker battling She-Devil Monique Van Buren.
More threatening than jungle perils, more brutal than jungle rivalry, more savage than the jungle fight for survival, is the terrible scourge of the ivory thieves, who stalk Tatter the elephant to please the insatiable greed of a ruthless, beautiful killer, who's more devil than woman. Yet in the darkest reaches of the land, beyond the law, beyond the borders of justice, the helpless and the hunted have a constant champion, Tarzan, Lord of the Jungle.
A couple of young people for you now, Groucho. Miss Barbara Hines and her partner, a special guest, Mr. Gordon Scott. So, folks, as you come in, please, and meet Groucho Marx.
Welcome for the DeSoto Plymouth dealer. Say the secret word and divide $101. It's a common word, something you always have with you. Barbara Hines and Gordon Scott. You're certainly a healthy-looking pair. Now, your name is Great Scott?
Gordon Scott.
What's the reason for the long locks? Are you nestling some tropical birds up there?
I'm not Groucho. I have to have it this way. I'm the new Tarzan.
You're the new Tarzan?
In the movies, yes.
Well, you can't be.
Yes,
It's impossible. Johnny Weissmuller is Tarzan. How do you explain that?
John hasn't had it for about 14 years, I think. I'm the 11th of the series.
How does your work compare with his?
Well, that's awfully hard to say, Groucho. It's like, me asking you how you rack up along Jack Benny. You know, I mean, it's the same thing. And
you don't want to win any money here.
Gordon Scott, a Las Vegas lifeguard, replaced Barker in Tarzan's Hidden Jungle in 1955, becoming the 11th Tarzan in the history of the series.
All the mounting excitement, the savage thrills, the gripping suspense you've ever hoped for in a picture are reflected in the breathtaking adventures of Gordon Scott, worthy successor to the great Tarzans of the past, as he gives new life to dangerous exploits and daring escapades in a forbidden wilderness of jungle beasts, lurking killers, savage tortures, deadly quicksand.
I take you back to camp now.
No, I've got to find Dr. Sellers.
Doctor, all right. Tarzan, take girl back now.
No, Tarzan, you don't understand. The men he took with him, they lied. They're hunters, killers. The doctor's in great danger. I've got to warn him.
Tarzan and the Lost Safari in 1957 found Tarzan leading a group of plane crash survivors to the Indian Ocean.
You have seen many Tarzan pictures, but now, out of the depths of the African bush, in fascinating new African locales, we bring you a story streamlined and up to the minute. Adventure takes to the air in a safari by luxury plane with two beautiful girls and their rash companions.
We're making a crash landing. We're making up.
Wrecked in the most dangerous jungle of the continent, trapped alive by ferocious tribes, they find a friend. Gordon Scott, 6'3" of muscular manhood, as Tarzan, as strong and quick as the beast of his jungle. There is no peril too hazardous when this girl comes into his life and awakens his love.
In jungle, girl need man to protect her. And man need mate. You could mate any man.
I couldn't have put it better myself. Only I wouldn't have expected to find you making a pass at another man's wife.
What is pass?
It means making love.
A top supporting cast, including Cheetah, the champion chimp.
Mr. Carter photographs Tarzan.
And Tarzan's Flight for Life, the following year, celebrated the 40th year of Tarzan in the movies and featured Scott battling a live 18-foot python. The snake required 6 men to unravel it from Tarzan's body at the end of the scene.
In the jungle, the fight for life is never ending. Even in Tarzan's home atop the trees, there lurked unseen danger to his lovely mate Jane, and constant peril to his adopted son. Warriors?
Yes, I was looking, and then one of them started to chase me.
Tarzan defied 1,000 deaths for his family and his friends.
Friend Nicole was dead?
Yeah.
Couldn't you help him?
Well, I tried to go to him. The witch doctors blocked the road. If I hadn't turned back, they'd have killed me.
The natives should know that the witch doctors have no power with sickness.
But they have big power over their people. As weird voodoo rituals fan the fires of barbaric violence.
Go now. Bring me the warm heart of Tarzan.
Frenzied hordes track down the one who has challenged their murderous superstition. Tarzan's Fight for Life animates new savagery and splendor in vibrant metro color. New feats of daring, like Escape from the Lion's Dungeon, The Hypnotized Strangler, Rough Riding Tarzan Style, The Spread Eagle Torture.
Scott appeared in the films Tarzan's Greatest Adventure and Tarzan the Magnificent in 1959 and 1960, 2 of the best movies in the history of the Tarzan series.
For the very first time, actually filmed on location in the mysterious, majestic, and romantic splendor of the peril-laden wilderness of Kenya, the screen comes alive with all the pulsating thrills and exciting characters created by fiction's foremost author of African adventure, Edgar Rice Burroughs.
Therefore, what are we to be afraid of?
Oh, listen, Krieger, no one's afraid. But don't delude yourself because we're 41. Tarzan won't come in at the front door, you know. He just wait down there and pick us up one by one if we're fools enough to give him the chance.
Suspense more spectacular than King Solomon's mine. Romance more powerful than the African Queen. Action more daring than Trader Horn. The Magnificent, caught between the fiercest aboriginal warriors of the equatorial jungles, the bloodlusting Maasai and Kiyukiyu tribesmen, and the most vicious band of renegades who ever set the dark continent aflame.
Any one of you that helps Tarzan is my enemy, and the enemy of my son.
The most authentic of all great African spectacles, filmed entirely in the last great wild animal refuge, the uncharted Mombasa Basin.
See him meet 1,000 dangers as he leads a strange safari across the fearsome heights of Kilimanjaro. The river of quicksand that no man had ever escaped alive.
I'm sinking!
The breathless 103-foot plunge over the hurtling Niagara of the jungle. The Thika waterfall, a dive never before attempted. Tarzan the Magnificent, daring, courageous, heroic, fighting to rid the last great wilderness of the cruelest of all its enemies.
The only chance is to send Koi out. My fight's with Tarzan. Hurt my son and I'll butcher every one of you.
Tarzan's Greatest Adventure was filmed on location in Kenya and featured non-stop action instead of the usual Tarzan, Jane, and Cheetah dynamic. Filmed in eye-filling cinemascope, the film showcased two of the best villains in the history of the series, played by then-unknowns Anthony Quayle and Sean Connery. Tarzan the Magnificent, also filmed in Africa, featured a treacherous jungle journey as Tarzan shepherds a prisoner, played by Jock Mahoney, to civilization. This Tarzan movie was the first since the advent of the sound era not to feature the famous Tarzan yell, due to its widespread parody among comic actors of the era.
Sir, why the swing to blend?
Made from real oranges, lemons.
Anything else?
Non-carbonated, much vitamin C makes strong.
Gordon Scott's last appearance as Tarzan came in this television pilot, Tarzan and the Trappers, in the mid-1960s.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you.
You scream. What frightened you?
Well, it's over now. That snake, Peter killed it. Golly, it's a mamba.
Mariki Waletu, in shadow of death. One bite from Mamba, death come quick.
Sleeping. Thank heavens Peter was here. Yes, Peter saved your life.
She's a good chimpanzee. Maybe you get these instead of Jane, huh?
Oh, you brought the curlew eggs. I'm sorry, Peter. I know you love eggs, but I'm going to fix Tarzan.
Or what?
A surprise.
Come, we go home.
Denny Miller, a UCLA basketball sensation, appeared as the Ape Man in MGM's remake of Tarzan the Ape Man in 1959. The production values that were a hallmark of the earlier Weissmuller version weren't visible, and Miller wasn't even referred to as Tarzan in the film. But while the quality of the Tarzan series had grown inconsistent by the mid-1960s, the Ape Man himself had become a genuine superstar, and with it came accompanying fame, parody, and controversy. In 1961, a Downey, California elementary school banned Tarzan books from its shelves because in Burroughs' novels, Tarzan and Jane had never been properly married. But if it wasn't in the schools, Tarzan's influence could be seen everywhere else, including Saturday morning cartoons such as George of the Jungle. Jock Mahoney, the stuntman who had small parts in several earlier films, was cast as Tarzan in Tarzan Goes to India in 1962. Filmed on location, the movie also featured soundtrack music by acclaimed Indian composer Ravi Shankar.
elephants aren't going to drown. I'm going to drive them through the pass.
Let's keep one thing straight right now. I'm building a wall across that pass. I'm not holding up my word for you or your elephants. Stay out of my way.
Tarzan goes to India in the greatest jungle picture of all time. A cast of 5,000. 300 elephants led by a rogue elephant. Jack Mahoney, one of the greatest stuntmen in all Hollywood history, as the greatest Tarzan of them all. And from the Indian jungle, from across the world to win your hearts, Jai the Elephant Boy.
Why you wear such clothes like me?
Because I live in the jungle, just like you.
You British doctor?
My name is Tarzan.
My name is Jai.
And Gajendra, king of the elephants. Tarzan goes to India. Also stars Simi as the beautiful Princess Kamara, Mark Dana, Leo Gordon.
Get out of the way!
And for the first time on the screen, a canter, the roundup of the last great herd of wild elephants in all India. Photographed as it was happening in the greatest jungle picture of all time. Tarzan goes to India. Look! Look! Look again. And this is only the trailer.
Tarzan's 3 challenges the next year saw Tarzan protecting a spiritual prince in Bangkok.
The sun rose high on this distant land the day a boy was to be crowned a king. When suddenly, the history of 1,000 years was shattered by the words,
I challenge. I challenge. On what ground? I invoke the challenge of the 4th test.
The challenge of might? But this challenge has not been invoked for 1,000 years. Are you aware what this will mean?
I am aware.
Into this background, into the strange and magnificent East, MGM traveled its color cameras, its special scope lenses, its award-winning technical crews to bring you an extraordinary adventure story. Into the interior of the Rudyard Kipling country, where East is East and West is West. But there is neither East nor West, border nor breed nor birth, when 2 strong men stand face to face, though they come from the ends of the earth. Filmed in the land of a high, bright sun, this is a Tarzan picture that challenges the mighty big one. Starring Jack Mahoney as the tall stranger from Africa, and Woody Strode, the matchless warrior of the Orient, in a challenge where there were no rules, except that one must live and one must die. This is the adventure story of a challenge, a boy and a baby elephant. You'll be awed by the challenge, charmed with the boy.
You see, smell pain.
And you'll laugh at Hungry, the most wonderful elephant you've ever seen. Here are scenes of surpassing splendor, of danger and suspense, such as you may never see again.
Come out now, or your friends will be killed.
Tashi! Don't listen to him!
Tashi! Tashi! Tashi!
Here are the giant caves of Phetchaburi, the great floating market of Bangkok, the temple of Buddhabat, magnificent shrine of the East, the 1,000 exotic and beautiful dancers of Chiang Mai, the wild and flaming jungles of Lam Thong.
But midway through the shooting, Mahoney contracted dysentery and later pneumonia. He finished the film, but lost nearly 50 pounds in the process. Mike Henry, a former linebacker for the Los Angeles Rams, replaced Mahoney, starring in Tarzan and the Valley of Gold in 1966.
Through Tukamai's green jungle hell, where the code is kill or be killed, two men hunt the Valley of Gold. Gennaro, dreamer of empires, dealer in death. Tarzan and his army of a lion, a leopard, and a chip.
These men are coming here with weapons that work, and they mean to use them.
I have come for the treasure of Tukamai. We are blessed with many treasures here. May I show you one of mine?
Tarzan faces his most daring adventure in the Valley of Gold.
But during production of Tarzan and the Great River, Henry's follow-up film, he was injured when a chimp slashed his chin, forcing the football star to have plastic surgery.
Halfway around the world from his native Africa, Tarzan answers a desperate call to rescue natives of Brazil, besieged by an ancient killer cult, spreading death and destruction by fire and poison claw. Thousands enslaved to mine diamonds. In the savage warriors' quest to rule the jungles, in homage to their god, the jaguar.
Now here, swab the deck. Everybody works on my boat.
Tell your people that the jungle belongs to Barcoon. Tarzan, fighting his way upriver. Undertaking incredible tasks that tax his tremendous strength to the breaking point. Tarzan, fearless and single-handed, explodes into action and tackles overwhelming odds.
After Tarzan and the Jungle Boy in 1968, Henry hung up his loincloth to pursue other roles in such films as The Green Berets. The next Tarzan, Ron Ely, became the 15th in the history of the series and the first with a primetime television show. Filmed in Brazil, the program's drawing card was Eli's reputation for always performing his own stunts, resulting in numerous injuries, but also ultra-realistic action sequences. The show also had prestigious guest appearances by such stars as Julie Harris, James Whitmore, and in one famous episode, Diana Ross and the Supremes as wayward nuns. The success of the show amidst the turbulence of the 1960s once again underscored Tarzan's universal appeal and set the stage for more recent interpretations of Burroughs' classic hero. Tarzan the Ape Man in 1981 featured Miles O'Keefe in the title role, though the film's producer and co-star, Bo Derek, was the main focus of attention.
Now, MGM presents one of the most beautiful women of our time in the most erotic adventure of all time.
What is that?
That, I believe, my dear, is Tarzan. Bo Derek, Richard Harris, and Miles O'Keefe in Tarzan, the Ape Man. Tarzan, the Ape Man.
And Greystoke, the legend of Tarzan, Lord of the Apes, cast French actor Christopher Lambert as the Ape Man in 1984. The film was the most ambitious Tarzan production ever, with ultra-realistic makeup effects in the African sequences by design expert Rick Baker. The Tarzan mystique and its accompanying box office success has always inspired knockoffs of the Bomba and Jungle Jim variety, and the 1970s and 1980s have been no exception. Shame of the Jungle, an animated spoof of the Tarzan legend, was produced in Belgium in 1975, and for its English language release 4 years later, John Belushi, Bill Murray, and Johnny Weissmuller Jr. provided the cartoon voices. Sheena, in 1984, took a similarly campy approach to the African wilderness, featuring Tanya Roberts as Queen of the Jungle. But through it all, Edgar Rice Burroughs' creation has withstood the slings and arrows of 75 years and endured as both a hero and icon for moviegoers the world over. It isn't difficult to see why. Tarzan's dealings with a constantly changing world, its natural dangers as well as industrial ones, make him a supremely identifiable figure to any audience on the globe. His man-of-action posture cuts across all language barriers, showing us that racial, lingual, and geographical differences can't separate the global unity of the human spirit. And his ability to live and coexist with his natural habitat constantly reminds us that we, like the other mammals, are just another species in the jungle, no better and no worse than any others. Tarzan's screen persona will more than likely persevere into the 21st century, or until the jungle is gone, whichever comes first. And audiences will no doubt follow his adventures to the end, just as they've watched him swing through the trees, lead elephant stampedes, and yell that trademark yell in so many past films.
What's that?
Tarzan.
You don't believe the story, do you, Ted?
I heard the story. I heard it once in London. Anyway, we better camp here for tonight. Anga, up with the tent.
So cold-blooded murder is another of your accomplishments. Get up, you contemptible cad. Get up. Greet them.
Wait, get your breath first.
Upon my word.
You're all right? You're not hurt?
My Mary.
Tantor.
No, Tarzan. Not Panther. I've got to teach you English. It's an elephant.
Tantor.
No, Tarzan. Not Panther. It's an elephant.
Tantor.
No, Tarzan. Elephant.
Belu.
No, Tarzan. It's a chimpanzee.
Belu.
No. Chimpanzee.
Belu.
No. Tarzan. Well, you can call it Daily, Tarzan, but it's still chimpanzee.